Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 227 of the Thought Team Navigating Now virtual roundtable series. My name is Ashley Clark, and I'm a director here at Thought Team. We continue to come live to you all every Thursday at 3 p.m. Central, and you can find today's episode and all future episodes at thoughttm.com/live. Today's topic is all around rethinking talent in the new talent landscape. And I don't think it's any surprise to any one of us that we continue to live through really uncertain times. Thinking back, Navigating Now was started out of a place of recognizing that we were navigating through unprecedented experiences as leaders 5 years ago. And we're still living through new and changing landscapes today that require us to think about things differently and how we approach talent and how we develop the folks that are within our organization and how we continue to create really inspiring and meaningful cultures. With that, I'm really looking forward to the conversation today with our guest. His name is Roger Brooks, and he's the Global Head of Talent and Management at Ecobat. This is his first time as a Navigating Now guest. Welcome, Roger. How are you today?
Thanks, Ash. Appreciate it. Very, very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Really glad to have you on the show today. As we jump into this conversation, I want to start with a little bit of a throwback question for you, because I know you've had a really dynamic career in training and design. You started in food service way back when, and you've worked through training and communication. You ran operations for Girl Power to Cure for a while. And then you've been scaling talent management functions. And so I'm really curious, as you think back to your childhood, what is one memory that sticks out for you that you would say, this is why I'm in talent management or talent development today?
Wow. Childhood. It's been a few years ago, but I don't know. I think growing up and in my professional career, I've really been fortunate to have great teachers, mentors, and leaders who have invested in me, took the time to, kind of walk me through learning, new things, building new skills. And so I think that's why I love what I do. I saw them do that for me, and I thought, what a great place to be in order to, kind of share that with others. And my love is I love to watch people grow. I love, you know, kind of cliche, but in the training and development world, we love to see the light bulbs go off, right? And
Yeah.
when people come up after a training session or after a coaching session and they say, this was really helpful. It helped me kind of think through X, Y, and Z. And so I think that's what I enjoy doing, and I love being a part of bringing that to other people.
Oh, that's incredible. Is there one moment that sticks out in particular, either from a training that you attended or from a mentor or coach who you worked with, that you say this was one instance that was particularly impactful for you?
Um, wow. Yeah, in high school, probably I was in DECA, which for people who are nerds, might remember DECA was the marketing education class from years ago, and my teacher at that time, I remember her name, Miss Tolbert.
Oh,
She always just had such profound, positive energy that um, kind of moved you forward, propelled you forward, and I think I looked for that throughout my career. Like, who are those people around me that,
mhm.
because I think it's important that you surround yourself with people who are not only there to lift you, but are going to motivate you and push you. And she was someone who really pushed me out of my comfort zone and kind of encouraged me to reach beyond what I thought was possible. And so, yeah, that's probably I've got a few others, but that's probably
Yeah.
the best memory, yeah.
Oh, I think it's so incredible when you think back on the life that you've lived and there are those names that stick out to you because those people were so impactful that it doesn't matter if it was 5 years or 15 years or 35 years
Oh,
ago.
yeah.
They are so impressionable on who you are and how who you've become since that time and experience.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I want to keep us in a little bit of a reflection backspace for another minute, because I know today we're talking about the change in talent landscape and what it's looking like. And so I'm really curious, because you've been in this space for a while now. And so what have you seen in the last few years that you would say really define how the talent landscape is changing and what we need to be mindful of in the next couple of years?
Yeah, lots of tech, lots
Mhm.
of automation. I think every company's trying to figure out how to do it quicker, faster, better.
Sure.
And as business professionals, we have to embrace that, right? We really do. Otherwise, you're fighting against the business.
Yeah.
What I think we have to be cautious about, especially in the talent space, is our work is predicated on people and the
Mhm.
human experience. And if you automate it too much, if you use technology too much, we'll lose that human experience. And so, I'd love to tell you today, like, we're leveraging all of this incredible technology. Instead, what I can tell you is, as an organization, we're exploring. We're kind of just in the explorative phase where we're saying, listen, how can we envision AI to impact our business? I mean, it is today already in some areas, but we're also working hard not to lose that human connection. I was at a conference not too long ago, and I was on a panel with a couple of other folks, and was frankly a little blown away at just the technology that they're using. And mind you, these
Mhm.
are these are other industries, these are other businesses that are unlike ours, but
Sure.
um, I was just reminded of the fact, like, and I asked them the question, so how are you keeping the connection with people?
Mhm.
And it stumped them a little bit, right? Because they're using these filters, they're using AI to kind of sift through applications, and then only then are they looking at candidates, in the acquisition phase. But we're trying to really get back to some basics and use some traditional recruiting strategies with how do you go out and really look for candidates that are a fit? How are we looking for non-traditional candidates? That's another thing that's really changed. Not everyone today is graduating from university or getting a degree. I read some research not too long ago. There's this new acronym called STARS, which are people who are getting skills through alternative routes. Those people also need to be considered, right? And so if you apply some of these filters, you might lose the impact that could be had in finding these people who come to the table with really great skills, maybe really great experience, but they're missing some of those professional credentials that we've kind of hung our hat on for years as requirements for roles. So I'm challenging ourselves and saying, listen, if we see someone come across who demonstrates strong skill, communicates well, demonstrates a desire to learn and grow and be a contributor to the overall business, I think they're worth a conversation, right? And I don't know that there's AI out there today that can do that. There probably is, but um, I will share with you too. Really proud of the fact that at Ecobat we have what's called an AI study group, and this is just a group of us from different disciplines who get together on occasion. We've got a thread on Teams where we share information, and we're just exploring and we're sharing with each other the different ways in which we're using AI today. And it's encouraging for some, it's cautious and watchful for others,
Sure.
right? Especially for our IT teams who are keeping an eye on security and making sure we're all using that technology safely. So it's fun, but I'm also just being cautious and making sure that we're leveraging it uh, within kind of the right context.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack in what you just shared. One is,
Yeah.
I really wanna align with what you were sharing about bringing the humanness or human-centeredness back into the recruiting
Yeah.
and development process. At Thought Jam, we say that we design and deliver human-centered experiences that inspire growth. And so there's a big focus for us back on how do we really make sure that every experience that we're creating and every interaction that we're having has that human-centeredness central to each one of those different pieces. And I think it can be so easy, especially in such a tech forward world, to not lead with that human centered piece. And so I really appreciate your push back to talent and HR professionals of how do we bring that humanity back into the experience and leverage technology in some impactful ways, but not necessarily in ways that create disconnection from other folks who are really important to have that piece of community and connection with. I'm I'm
Yeah.
really curious because you brought up some of the pieces around credentials, non-traditional credentials, as you're thinking about what do you actually need for somebody who's coming in role. And you talked through if they have some of these skills that were developed in non-traditional routes, how do you consider those folks? And so I'm curious to hear from you. How do you how do you look for that, or how do you identify some of that when you're looking at a resume? And what are some indicators for you that, hey, this person might not necessarily have some of those initial degrees, experiences that we determined were really important, but they have some of those raw skills and talent that we think would be really beneficial for the role that we're hiring for?
Yeah, I think you really got to dig into, every resume likely has bullets,
Sure.
right? You got to dig into those statements and what do they
Mhm.
mean? Have they been able to clearly articulate how they've made contributions within the role? You know, along that same research I was telling you about with stars, that they cited from a study, I think from Pearson Business School, that only 13% of college graduates today really have the
Mhm.
skills needed for the job that they're applying for. So they're learning those on the job, right? And then those skills become transferable to the next role, then the next role. And so are candidates able to really articulate their journey and the skills that they've picked up along the way? And then in a face-to-face interview, are they, showing up motivated? Are they showing up inspired? Are they showing up positive, encouraged? Those are, in my opinion, really strong buy signs, right? Those are people you really want to think about bringing on and adding value to the culture that you've created. And so I think looking at those skills, looking at those experiences that they've had, um, and giving them the opportunity to talk about those in meaningful ways. The other thing that we did is we helped managers and hiring managers do better at behavior-based
Uh,
interviewing. um, you know, we've passed on a couple of candidates where we've gotten some pushback from some hiring managers that said, hey, but you know, Susie doesn't have an MBA, and that's what we've said is preferred. And I said, well, but let's take a look at Susie and here are the reasons why I'd really like for you to have a conversation. If I look across the organization, in a number of ones that I've worked at, the departments that are succeeding have hungry, positive, go-getters as part of the team. And so, how do you really work to identify those and bring those in to add value to the culture that you've created? That's what we're looking for. And so I think that's
mhm.
helpful. And when we, search in our databases and things, we're looking for um, glimpses of where people have had those experiences and are able to articulate
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. So in that, you mentioned some around bringing folks into the culture that you've created, and I think you've been masterful over the years of building really intentional cultures. And so I would love to hear a little bit from you on how have you done that, and what are some really important things to consider as you're building culture, because I've seen you really take take maybe dispersed cultures and bring them together and then really grow a united front and brand together from an employee experience perspective. And I think that that's can be a really challenging thing to do. And I think that you're particularly incredibly skilled at it.
Well, thank you. Really appreciate that. Um, I learned many years ago, we rolled out a program around the Oz
Mm.
principle. I'm sure some people have read it, but it's all about creating experiences for people. And how do we engineer experiences specifically around management development, supervisory development, leadership development, where people come and they have an experience that they can reflect on and they can remember. Um, how do we make it fun? When people are having fun, they're learning.
Yeah.
We know that there's enough data uh, in human behavior that proves that out. And so, designing and developing programs that really motivate people to be where they want to be a part of something bigger. I think is what we've tried to do at Ecobat. We while there, we've rolled out a leadership development program across the globe. In the language that people live and operate in. So if we have facilities in Germany and France and Italy, and being able to be there and be a part of those experiences in their language and have that experience with them, I think has shifted some thinking around the kind of company we are and who we want to be. We've worked really hard at that. And so, engineering that in a way that really speaks to people, getting back to the human experience, right? It's about connecting. One session we were at a few months back, two people in the session, and one said something that the other didn't know that they felt in a certain way, and it brought about, right, it precipitated a conversation for them to have around how they could move forward in a more positive way. Those are the things that I think bring people together. And those are the things that I love to bring to cultures, right? And when you talk to candidates about it, you got to share those things, right? So tell me, give me a time where you've added value to the culture at your company that you're currently at, right? Is a great question. So it begins to set the expectation with people like, hey, I'm going to be watching, right? We're going to be watching how you are making a contribution to the culture. We want you to engage. We expect you to engage, and we're going to give you opportunities to do that. But setting that up in the beginning, I think, really helps just set the tone for when we offer a role. Here's how I expect you to be an employee at Ecobat or whatever organization you happen to
Yeah.
be.
I love that idea of experiences can be a catalyst, or they are a catalyst for change, because it's in those
Mhm.
experiences or moments where you referred to it early on, that light bulb moment, or the instance where you all of a sudden can see something from a completely different perspective. And it's those moments that then enable you to be able to have that moment of disruption that then can change the trajectory of how you interact differently in the future, or how you think about a conversation differently, or how you choose to delegate your work in a different way. There's so many different layers of how that can actually impact how you then shift and change your behavior moving forward.
Yeah, and like, listen, I think we all, and this is just a belief that I have, right? Like, and I know we have to be really cognizant of the fact that people show up neurologically
Yeah.
diverse and require different things from us as an organization. So we have to be open to that. But when you create a place where people want to be, right?
Yeah.
Performance or getting people to perform is no longer an issue, right? I had a conversation with someone just the other day, and they were just talking about their team in such positive ways around how they collaborate, how they, if I have a question, I can pick up the phone or I can Teams call them really quick, right? That tells me That's
Yeah.
culture, right? That's the kind of culture we want precipitated across everywhere. Not these silos where people are working, but instead, feeling comfortable, having the psychological safety around being able to be vulnerable and say, I don't know how to do this, right? And going to a peer or going to your supervisor and saying, hey, can you show me how to do this? It doesn't mean that you're not showing up with the skills you need to do your job. You just need a little coaching. And so that to me, I think is really what culture is
Mhm.
about.
I don't know that I've heard you define culture in that way before, of having the integration of psychological safety and then also the courage to ask for help combined together, where you know that it's safe for me to ask for help, and also I have the internal courage and confidence in myself that in asking for help, that's not a dig on anyone's capability or capacity. It just means that you're
Sure.
on the precipice of learning something new, and whenever you're in that space, it requires a little bit more grace and space to have the runway to learn.
Yeah. No, and listen, I get it. We're all moving really
Yeah.
fast, and sometimes it's better to just get it off the list and push it out, whether it's good or not so good, and just be done with it. But I would rather, and we coach our managers and our supervisors to understand, like, listen, wouldn't you rather have your employee come to you and ask for
Mhm.
guidance versus taking the risk of doing it
Yeah.
wrong? We run heavy industrial manufacturing. A risk can be significant, can be, really, really
Yeah.
dangerous. And so I would rather an employee, working in one of our plants, have the safety to know that they can ask a question, get the guidance that they're looking for, and do whatever the task that needs to be done in a safe and healthy way. So, we've thankfully seen really great results from that program, our emerging supervisor program. Where we're setting expectations with leaders around, here's how we really would like for you to show up. And if you struggle with that, let's have a conversation about it. Let me help explain to you why there's value in doing it a certain way, or talking to an employee in a way that helps keep them encouraged and motivated. So to me, that's all culture, right? Uh, Read a book many, many years ago that said, you build up and you break down relationships one conversation at
Mhm.
a time. And that is so, so
Yeah.
important. So we're getting off topic now,
We can bring it back. I was gonna say,
yeah.
as we've talked over time, one of the things that's come up that I would love to get your perspective on is with the continued integration of AI, and recognizing that there are some roles that are now going to um, that AI will be able to augment some of the tasks that sat within that role before. And so now you might have some folks
Mhm.
who are and have been high performers, but perhaps their role has part of that role has been shifted into some kind of technology based solution. And now you're looking at how do we move them into a different role, or think about that job a little bit differently, because they are a culture fit and they are contributing quite a bit to the organization. How have you, either tactically or in concept, thought about how you really take some of that great talent and then kind of reimagine what they could look like within the organization, given all the disruption that we continue to face today?
Yeah, I think it's a very valid point. You see on the news and everywhere, all these companies are going after AI so strong, frankly, to save money,
Yeah.
right? Translation, might want to cut
Sure.
heads, right? Reduce headcount and save money. But what happens to the talent that's left
Yeah.
behind, right? How do we help skill them in a way that adds even more value to what they can bring to the organization? I think this is really has a lot to do with development
Yeah.
planning. Having conversations with high potential employees around where do they want to grow? Where do they see opportunities within the organization where they want to learn more? And how do we help engineer those experiences for them? They can participate as a project member outside of their current function to gain
Mm.
experience. We kind of trialed that a little bit with our finance and accounting group. We had some members who mostly sit in one function, spend some time in some other places, and got to add, to their resume an opportunity to participate in a project. Had we not asked the question, had they not said, "Yeah, this is of interest
Yeah.
to me," and so then they become a higher value add player. Um, you know, I think the days of subject matter experts are probably going away, and we're moving more to this generalist idea of how can an employee operate and function
Mm.
across kind of a spectrum of roles. How can they add value as both someone who's in finance as well as HR as well as and I think it's very
Yeah.
possible, right? I think we're just kind of exploring what that looks like today, and not taking a knee-jerk reaction to looking at AI as a way to reduce headcount, but instead really look at who are the valuable players on the team today and how can we help diversify their skills so that they become even more marketable, more impactful to the organization.
It's interesting how you talked through what are essentially the new required skills or new universal skills that are needed to be successful today, because we talk about that fairly regularly at Thought
Mm.
of how do we really make sure that what we're delivering for folks takes into account those, we call them new required skills of what is needed to be
Mhm.
successful today, things like empathy or agility or influence or
Mhm.
the understanding of different intrinsic and extrinsic motivators and how often that changes for your teammates over time as their life shifts a little bit or as they have different priorities that come up. And it seems like that all of those, what I think is very interesting about them is they can be applied in more of that generalist setting of where you can be successful in a range of different roles, not necessarily just in one space as a subject matter expert. And so I think continuing to encourage organizations to look at what are those new universal skills that are really important for your folks today to be
Yeah.
successful. And then how do you make sure that you give them the experiences to be able to develop those as they move forward so that they don't get left
And
behind.
develop them and demonstrate them to key decision
Yeah.
makers within the organization, right? All of that is part of engineering the experience. And I think sometimes as talent professionals, we have to take a couple of steps back and just think through that a little
Yeah.
bit and um, engineer it,
Yeah.
build it,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
So,
well, Roger, I think that you and we could talk for hours about this. We have over time. And I know we're bumping up a little bit against time. So as we are working to round out this episode, I'd love to give the folks who are tuning in today a little bit deeper of a picture into who you are as a human in a little bit of a lightning round with some questions if you're up for it.
oh
Are you
geez.
ready?
Okay.
Okay.
Don't be careful what I might say. No.
I think you'll be fine. Question one
Okay, go for it.
is, what is something that you are reading, watching, or listening to right now that you're really enjoying? And this could be either personally or professionally.
Um, wow. Um, Let me come back to that one. Can we come back? Let me think about
We
that a little
can, but
bit.
that might be the easiest lightning round question. Just FYI.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Question two is, what is a skill that you think that most people leaders should embrace and perhaps they haven't yet?
Um, it's probably one that we've hung our hat on for years, and that's you know having meaningful conversations with your teams and connecting with them, right? um and when I say meaningful conversations, right, it's also the development conversation. It's the coaching conversation. It's being able to give feedback that doesn't feel punitive. Being able to acknowledge people when they've done really, really great work. Kind of all this ties back to a place of psychological safety, like we talked about, right? Where people feel trusted as though their leader is going to give them um, good information, good direction around where they should be, what they should be doing. Um, that I think is probably most impactful for any leader to develop and
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. I think that that one is it is so powerful when you can understand the art of having those meaningful conversations where you can be both direct and also kind at the same time and hold the space for whatever the conversation is that needs to happen. So, I
Yeah, without
yeah.
a doubt.
Okay, last lightning round question until maybe I come back to your reading, watching, listening to one.
Okay.
If you so I want you to take a moment and to think about one thing that you really admire about yourself, a quality, a skill.
Ooh,
And then
that's a question.
and then I
Go
want you
ahead.
to finish this sentence. If the world were more like Roger, it would be more blank.
Huh. Um, Probably supportive. I really like being supportive of people. You know, However they need to be supported. Go to like if you want to have a conversation, if you want to brainstorm, some different ways and how you can approach something. I think we all need in our life that one or two people within your personal and professional life that you trust is going to give you honest, um, constructive
Yeah.
feedback, right, and information, or ask you really thought-provoking questions around, what is it that you're really trying to do or accomplish. So I really like that's the role I like to play, is being supportive. My kids might tell you differently at times, but no, I think supportive. And then if the world were more like me, w- my wife and I, when we had our daughters, we've always talked to them about the importance of being
Mm,
kind.
yeah.
You never know what people are going through in life. And, heck, we've all had even our own personal, challenges and obstacles. And so all those things make us behave in ways that are likely not who we
Mhm.
really are. And so giving people kindness and grace, I think is really, really beneficial. Now there's times when people can take
Sure.
advantage of that, right? And usually you know when that, but show up being kind, being open to people and different perspectives, different ways of thinking, different ways of living. We all have not been afforded the same things in life that
Yeah.
we have, and so just respect that people are coming from different places and show up differently, and so just be kind.
Oh, in knowing you, I totally see that, and I will also add, one of my favorite quotes is, "It costs you nothing to be kind," and I say that to kids all the
It does.
time is, there are a lot of things where it does cost you something if you're gonna act in a different way, if you're gonna stand up for somebody, if you're gonna advocate for somebody, there are all these different pieces where it can cost you, but it costs you nothing to be kind to the person who's right in front of you, so I think that that's a really beautiful sentiment.
Thanks.
Well, Roger, this has been an incredible conversation as always. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
You're welcome. I got out
You
of the
did, I
question
know,
on book.
unless you want to bring it back up.
No, I
Yeah.
will share this. You know, I don't know that it's a book I'm watching the world right now, right? And um, I'm looking for leaders who are going to
Mhm.
step up and do the right things. I think there's a really big opportunity, and I want to applaud those. There's just a lot going on
Yeah.
right now. Not to get political at all, but if we go back to being good humans, what does that mean? My faith has taught me that. My personal and professional life has taught me that, and I'm
Mhm.
watching to see
Yeah.
who's showing up to be those leaders that we really need right
Mm.
now. And so that's what I'm watching.
I I feel like we could go down a whole 'nother episode on that, and I really appreciate that sentiment. I don't know if anybody's ever answered in that way before, but I think it's a really neat perspective to have of I'm watching what's happening right now to see who rises up and who steps up in different ways and what
Yeah.
does that look like. And it's such a way of it's so easy to talk about, you learn from history or you can learn from history. It's a lot harder sometimes to recognize that you're living in history right now and what
Without
are
a
the
doubt.
moments that you can learn from that. So I will refrain from my excitement and going down that path. And I will say thank you for the insights, the perspective, and just the warm energy that you brought to our session today. It's so wonderful to have you join us and to officially be part of the Navigating Now community. And we wish you all the best in your leadership and what you continue to do.
Thank you. No, been a pleasure. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Of
Been awesome.
course. All
Appreciate it.
right. Well, we want to thank Roger Brooks for joining us in today's episode, number 227 of the Thought Team Navigating Now virtual roundtable series. Again, we go live every Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. Central, and we want to thank our community who join us week over week on LinkedIn, on YouTube, directly on the Thought Team website. We wish you all a wonderful rest of your